Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power of Man podcast. My name's Rory Paquette. I know you know that already, but just in case some of you are new, that's who I am. And I am, as always, your very grateful host, folks. The way that you have turned out since we went to 5 days a week a while ago has been nothing short of incredible. You folks have been there. The likes, the subscribes, the DMs. Oh my goodness, the DMs have been so amazing, and I cannot thank you enough. If you're not out there doing what you're doing, I can't sit behind this mic and do what I'm doing. So I am eternally grateful that I get to live my life doing this. And I hope one of the reasons you're doing that is because we keep bringing powerful men on here with awesome stories, just like we have today. I think you're going to love this guest. I really do. I'm not going to tell you anything else till it's time, but we'll get there. For those of you who are friends of the program, you all know what time it is. That's right. We got to pay a couple of bills. So let's get that done. Let me take a sip of my preferred beverage. Man, I just made this. It is so hot. I think I just singed my mustache. All right. It's beautiful. And you guys all know what we're drinking. That's right. It's Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Go check them out. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful, just like my wife. They brew a mean bean. It's a fantastic cup of joe. Folks, they do all the right things for all the right reasons, and they support veterans, which on the Power of Man show, you know is vitally important to us. We have a lot of you folks that are veterans out there listening. Love every one of you and what you've done for us. All sorts of respect. And Freedom Hill Coffee feels the same way. That's why we support them. Folks, Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Look them up, check them out. Tell them Power of Man sent you. All right, let me get one more sip of this so I can keep up with this young buck across the table from me. Oh, we are ready to go, folks. Here we go. I'll be drinking that throughout. All right, let's knock this out. With us today, we have an absolutely fantastic guest. I've had a chance to talk to this guy a little bit on another show of ours, which you may have heard at this point because it probably came out before this one did. And he's a fabulous guy, he really is. He's got some great ideas. He's got a neat podcast, which I've heard, and I think you guys should all check out. And he's a Christian man who has a whole lot to say, and I think you're going to really love this. So, here we go. The host of the 5 a.m. podcast, please welcome Michael Klassen. Michael, how you doing, brother?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. A pleasure, absolutely, to chat with you and your guests today.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Michael, I love your podcast. I know we're going to talk about that some more and some of the other
Mhm.
things that you have to offer and that you have to say. For right now, why don't you go ahead and tell our audience, who is Michael Clausen? What are you about? And what brings you here today, brother?
Wow. Well, growing up, grew up on a farm in Manitoba, Canada. And so it's cold from like at least November till April. And cold is like below like negative numbers on the Fahrenheit scale. So lots of dark mornings because in the winter it yeah, it stays dark into the morning hours and gets dark around 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So the reason that I mentioned that is because that was in those younger years was when our parents were really discipling us in our Christian faith. And I heard about this guy named Barnabas and that he was the son of encouragement. And I thought, wow, that's somebody that I could, other than Samuel, I could learn to be an encourager of those around me. And yeah, trial by fire. Growing up, didn't have a lot of friends. Kind of small community. You got to have somebody that's the butt of everyone's jokes, and so I hung around with the people that had no other friends either. So we were friends by default because nobody wanted to hang around with us. And that was okay. I had the Lord, and I had a couple of people that I would classify as friends way back then. And one of the guys I'm still friends with. Uh, so, thanks be to God. Those the fires and trials of adversity that really uh, turn us into who we are today.
hmm Nice. Nice. So, I was going to ask you that after the last time we had a chance to talk was, kind of where does that faith come from?
Mhm.
This is something you were raised with and that you've had since you were very little, it sounds
Yeah, yeah.
like. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it goes back generations, generations upon generations of believers. in my family. Some people had a stronger faith than others, but it was in that faith community and that faith mindset. And so I've got a long heritage of that. And certainly, I have other relatives that made other choices than me, but for me, I knew that Christ had something that I wanted. And it's not so much of making converts as we hear, but of making disciples. And I was really made to be a disciple of the Lord. And there's a lot of hard experiences. It's like Job said, he realized he had been refined like gold through the fire. And I think what that's actually a blessing for so many of us that whatever stage your clothes might still be singed or smell like smoke. We're all at that varying point in that refining fire, and some of us might be out of one fire, and then you see another one coming. But um, hopefully, I'm still answering your question. But
Oh yeah.
if you remember the song, "She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes,"
Oh yeah.
so one of those things of that refining fire is so that we can stop going around the mountain because we passed the test. We don't have to go around anymore. I'd say that sums up my life of, oh man, wait a second. I recognize this because I've gone around the same mountain like 3 times. And, anyway, the Lord is good and faithful.
I love that. I love that. The coming around the mountain. I've never heard that put that way, but I can see it. The
Yeah.
visual's perfect. So
Words for life, my friend. Words for life.
100%. I love it. Okay, so you grew up with that. You've got this very strong faith. We're going to absolutely be coming back to that throughout, our episode
Hmm.
today. But you were not always on the podcasting track necessarily, but
Yes.
but
Right.
you did some things that might have been close, right? So, professionally, who is Michael?
Yeah. Well, I was somebody that loved television from the moment I discovered it. And it might have been maybe that I didn't like my chores, but we had a rule: you work first, play later. And I loved that television, and I loved watching it. I loved the pictures. I loved that whole thing. So that's what I wanted to do uh, as I finished school, and I actually went to Bible college for 4 years because I felt like I needed to go there, but I didn't want to be a pastor in a church.
Okay.
That's just not for me. I did not want to do that. I didn't like the whole structure of church. And so, fortunately, I was able to stay working in television after I graduated. It wasn't full time, so I had a lot of other jobs, worked in construction, worked in a machine shop, learned about project management, and found my brain works really well with organizing people
Hmm.
and kind of seeing the broader scope and putting teams together. And whether I was on a construction site or whether I was in a TV studio, I had this ability to find a way to get the best out of my team. To keep people separated from each other so they could focus on their work or whatever the buttons might be that needed to be pushed. And I just remember my father-in-law came to visit us, and he said to his wife, not his wife, my wife, his daughter, later, he said, "Boy, Michael's really good at putting teams together." And I think it came back from those younger years of struggling to find friends, struggling to fit in, being friends or fitting in with the people that didn't fit in, and just finding how we can come together. And so I think I've derailed my train of thought. But how's that for an answer?
It was a great answer. You were killing it.
Okay,
Don't
good.
worry. No, you're good to go. And so loving TV, obviously, it got you into the industry, at some point.
Yes.
And you were doing something, I think if I remember right, before you got into podcasting, you were doing
Hmm.
something that was
Yeah.
like you were doing a podcast for somebody, right?
Well, I was a senior broadcast producer
Okay.
at the network that I was working at, and uh, the last couple of years, I was producing 2 podcasts in addition to some other shows that were going on. So they were kind of political based
Okay.
content. So a lot of it could be really painful, to watch or to hear because it's not always positive stuff, right? Like in marketing, they say you always got to have an enemy. And so
Yeah.
uh that's kind of politics. Is just I know I realize the left and right wing are all they're all on the same bird. And because I've worked in television for a lot of time, I was also on political boards or other boards in the community. I was always at community functions and events. And that was part of my job to be kind of an ambassador of our station to the business community and other people around us. So you just you get around those people that sit at the city gates. That's kind of the nature of working in local television because it's focused on the community, it's focused on the surrounding area. And so I would go to these events, and I had my brother-in-law and I were somewhere, and he said, Michael, like, you know, people everywhere you go. And it's like, he's like, there's not one place we go to where you don't say hi to at least one person. And so thank the Lord. That's my personality, but it also fit well with who I was in the industry of knowing who the people were that sat at the city gates or very much served those that sat at the city gates or did business with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're doing politics. You're
Hmm.
you're networking to say the
Yes.
least. You're not having a great time necessarily doing this. Doesn't sound like, but or are you?
Oh no, I loved it.
You
It was
loved it.
great.
Okay,
And
all right.
and it was very stressful. It's kind of like if you think of a heavy wool blanket and you soak it with water and then you wear that as a shawl. That's what it would feel like being like a television producer. It's just the weight of that pressure. But yet somehow you get to learn different centers of the different parts of the brain react in different circumstances. And so you get really familiar with that stress center. I think for me, it was kind of on the right side of my skull. And you just know that that's the stress and we just deal with it. And growing up in that industry, a lot of people smoked and drank and did pharmaceuticals because you had to deal with the stress of it all. And there was a very senior broadcaster that I had an opportunity to work with here and there along the way. And he and I were chatting, kind of reflecting on his career, because he was retired and he was still doing stuff, big name in the community. And he said to me, he said, I ran the AA group, and he said almost all my staff were members of my chapter of AA. And so I remember when I was just starting out, I went into Patrick's office. He was the manager of this TV station, and his ashtray, I don't know, it was like about this big around, and it was permanently full of cigarette butts. And this is when you could still smoke inside,
Right.
and the one room you couldn't smoke in was master control or the control room. You couldn't smoke, eat, or drink in there. But what's funny is um, that was just a common thing of especially smoking and probably vaping now, but there used to be a joke, smoke them if you got them, because we have
Hmm.
like 5 minutes. We're off air right now. Smoke them if you got them. And I was helping out like a Christian fundraiser for this ministry. I was kind of in control of this one room. And we were off air for a while. So I said, smoke them if you got them. And I got a dirty look from across the room from like the pastor's daughter or something like that. And I was like, hey, I mean, people do. So you got a break. If you don't want to smoke, there you
It's
go.
just an expression.
Do something
It's
else.
just an expression,
Just an
really.
expression. Yep. That's right.
Nice. No, I'm old enough to remember when that was very prominent. And,
Yes.
I came up through advertising and real estate. And oh my
Okay.
goodness, it was like, hey, come on in, sit down, have a drink.
Yeah.
The whole everything you saw in Mad Men, the series
Hmm.
that used to be
I
on was
bet. Yes.
historically very accurate, unfortunately. And yeah, it carried on for a long, long, long time, especially through real estate. So I know what you're talking about. So I don't know how I made it through the whole thing without being a smoker, but again,
Yeah.
thanks be to God. So I'll
Yes.
take it all day. But so you're doing a job that you like and everything. Was it when you were making the podcasts for these other folks that you started to say, "Hey, I can do this"?
Oh, well, it goes farther back than that.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh, yeah. So I mentioned Patrick and um, Mr. Foley, man. So his nickname was Axel Foley. He was another guy. Steve. Foley was actually his name. And I was still in, just left high school or still in high school when I met him and Patrick at the TV station. And they gave me this advice that, there's not a lot of jobs. It's a very competitive industry, but there's a lot more jobs and less competition behind the camera than there is in front of the camera. And I was always already doing some stuff in front of the camera at the time, which I loved. But I
Hmm.
was also really good at that whole producer brain, organizing and getting things done, motivating people. And there was other times where I knew that I was intentionally passed over for opportunities to be in front of the camera because I was much more valuable behind the camera, controlling people, putting teams together, things
Hmm.
like that. So I was always watching these guys that I thought were maybe par or subpar, as the case might be. Some were really good, and some just you knew that that was their identity and they had to be there. That was their thing that kept them going. And I didn't have that. I had Jesus Christ in my life. This is my thinking. This doesn't say who I am, and this doesn't give me my reason to be. So I knew the opportunity would come eventually, and even at the station that I used to work at, I would fill in when the other people were on holidays or they were on the day off. I'd fill in and I'd do the interviews. We'd do 15-minute interviews with different celebrities or other people like that, and so I had a pretty good relationship with a couple of the other younger staff, and so we would. I was sitting at the desk. We were, I don't know, doing some tweaking of switches and settings and things like that. And the prompter was set, and this other guy was getting ready to read his news. And I would kind of give advice to people of, stand back on your heels and your voice will be a little bit lower and you'll be less stressed because your body's focused on not falling backwards. So then it can't be stressed about reading your script. And so he had his script loaded. So I just grabbed the mouse and put it on my leg. I was standing and I just read through the whole thing. Anyway, he was not happy when I came in and was reading his script because there's a lot of rivalry to get in front of that lens
Hmm.
and stand in the front side of that camera. So it was something that I always knew that I was good at and that I've always enjoyed doing. So then when my position was terminated, my
Hmm.
wife and I said, "Hey, man, let's do it." And that happened one fateful day, late October. And so it's just we started planning and scheming. As somebody once said at my former place of work, Michael's always planning something. That's right, man. Got to stay like 4 steps ahead of everybody.
There you go. And so
Yeah.
that's how you got into podcasting
Hmm.
then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
So now is that when you went into podcasting, did you go right to 5 a.m. podcast? I mean, was that or do you have other ideas that
Oh,
came
yeah.
forward first, or what was the progression like there?
No, we've always had that. Well, we had that channel 5 a.m. podcast since early 2019,
Okay.
and then we had another one, Serenity Times on YouTube. It's still up there where I would do woodworking videos and things
Okay.
like that. But we really liked being entrepreneurial stuff, uh, and like I just mentioned, somebody at work said, "Oh, Michael's always planning something." It's because I always had contingency. You don't know what's going to happen, so overthinking things is was we had 5ampodcast.com and we were writing articles there and trying to encourage people or lift people up or give people options who maybe they were thinking their life felt like they were trudging through waist deep mud in a ditch. And we were hoping that if people would find our website, they'd find some things that would encourage them along the way or help them reframe what they're going through.
Hmm.
Yeah, give them some practical steps. So it just kind of that was the base for what we're doing now with the 5 a.m. podcast.
Nice. Okay. And as you and I have talked about the podcast before on another podcast,
Hmm.
and one of the things that
Yeah.
stuck out to me, obviously, was that you have so many ideas of that podcast that are, in fact, based back in your faith and your upbringing. And it seems
Hmm.
like maybe the spine, the backbone of the podcast is based in those principles. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, very much so. We all have these stinking thinkings and things that are put into our brain by people around us. I knew one guy, he did not know his name was not a swear word until he got a job at 14 years old or 16 years old. Like that's just what he was called by his family members was this expletive. And he had no idea that his name was like John Mark and had no idea. And so we realize that there's a lot of people out there that we have no concept of who they have become because of what they've gone through. And it really is true that we don't know what we don't know. And so my wife and I want to take our experiences, some that have been very unpleasant or difficult or challenging, and dealing with disappointment and other things. Um, and then we were able to find our way through. And so we thought, well, if we could find our way through, then we can help other people through. So that was the back. That's really the backbone of 5 a.m. podcast is sharing people's stories and
Nice.
helping people rise up.
That's beautiful. As we've talked about some of these things, and again, we covered some of this before, but I want to dig into a little deeper, here,
Sure. Yeah.
because I know that some of the things that I've read about your podcast and that I've heard also is, talking about purposeful early rising and cultivating
Yes.
gratitude. That was something you and I talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just for this audience, cover that quickly, if you don't mind,
Sure.
and then there's some
Yeah.
other questions I want to ask you, of course.
Yeah. Well, that gratitude is so important to change our mindset. And sometimes we don't actually know how to deal with the things that are coming at us, whether they're arrows and stones from other people or just the circumstances around us or fruit of the seeds that we've planted. And so the gratitude part, my wife's actually working on a gratitude journal. Her mom passed away when Susan was in her 20s. And that was a very dark, hurtful place for her to be. Her mom passed away quite suddenly. And um, prior to her mom passing away, she was the caregiver of her mom. The death was unexpected, of course. So her tool that she sensed she needed to do was this gratitude journal. And when you're in those dark places, um, and you have that thought, okay, I could be thankful for one thing. And if I could be thankful for one thing, I could be thankful for two things. Changing that focus. Um, and so that gratitude and changing our mindset, that is such a huge foundation for what we're doing at 5 a.m. podcast. Really.
Yeah. Nice. I mean, please convey my condolences to your wife for her loss.
Oh,
I,
sure.
I know it was
Yes.
a while ago, but still, some things take a
Oh
while.
yeah. They
Um,
don't fade like the shine of a car, that's for sure.
Goodness, no. Another aspect of this that I didn't get to ask you about last time, and I wanted to make sure I circled it. I'm like, man, when I talk to him
Yes.
this time, I'm getting into
Okay.
this.
Thank you.
You mentioned the law of divine life
Mm.
in here, and I would love to know what that is and how that plays into
Oh
your
yeah.
podcast and your movement.
Okay, thanks for asking that because that is eventually going to become a book. The law
Wonderful.
of
All right.
the divine life. So we hear a lot of differing opinions, whether you're in Christianity or some other religion. There's all these different thoughts about how life works, and Christianity has a lot of those answers. Even Jesus Christ is the answer for the wheel of reincarnation. Think about reincarnation.
Hmm.
Your whole purpose in reincarnation is you reincarnate to do better this time than you did last time. And you're looking for that perfection. Well, Jesus Christ came along who was perfect and died. He was that sacrifice. But if you think abstract, or not even abstractly, if you think, oh, so Jesus was that perfect man and God in the same body, and he died. He didn't deserve death. He didn't do anything wrong. So he gives his perfection to those who believe on his name. And so he's actually the absolute thing that reincarnation says you have to find. So the law of the divine life is this idea that we've been created by a creator. We have this ability to speak, well, to think first, And then those words or vibrations, they come out of our mouth, just like the world was created by what God spoke. So he thought, he planned, he spoke. And this idea of the law of the divine life is that the same power that raised Jesus Christ from the dead dwells in us bodily, which I think is an untapped power source that we don't think of in our world. We're so distracted by all these things, the bills that have to be paid. Is the light bill paid? Or is that turning on? We just got our gas bill here, and thankfully we're out of winter, so it's like manageable. Um, so we have all these distractions, but yet there's this divine life and this idea of being co-creators with God. See, we're so different than everything else. We think of God being who he is, and I understand people have different ideas of that. We think of Jesus Christ. So he was this God man. So he was fully God, fully man, according to scripture. And here we are, we're human. We're missing that divine aspect, but yet we have been endowed with this power from our creator. And it's no wonder that the angels, the sons of God, look down on the daughters of men, as we read in Genesis, and realizing, wow, they have something we don't. And so that got me thinking about what is this law of how God designed humanity to take dominion, to occupy until Jesus comes back, and to subdue all of creation. And so that's kind of the premise that that book is. It answers that question of taking humans through this idea of, if we are hid with God in Christ Jesus, if the same power that raised Jesus Christ from the dead dwells in us bodily, are we missing out on the kind of life that we could actually create here on earth?
Wow. That's going to be one heck of a book.
I hope so. Yeah. All these ideas that have rolled around in my head for years. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could ponder that for a while and you could
Oh,
take that
yes.
a lot of different directions. That's
Yeah.
quite the wow. That's quite the premise for a
Yeah.
book. Now, have you started working on the book? I'm just
I have.
curious.
Yeah.
I got to dig
Yeah.
into this. All
Yeah.
right.
So
Okay.
I'm kind of I like I want to go on the route of it being fictional, but yet a teaching book. And I would actually like, and my wife and I have gone back and forth on this one. So I'm waiting for her reaction. She's over there, but I actually want the main character to actually be a star
Okay.
who
Like a
who
star from the
like
sky
a
or
star in the sky. So
oh,
who was
okay.
created on the second day, I think, of creation. So gets actually to watch this whole thing play out. And we understand from the book of Enoch that the planets are wandering stars, and they have purposes. And there's the watchers and other things like that. And so I just thought, boy, that would be really interesting for this this star has no divinity in itself, has no humanity in itself, is part of creation, and just watches what its creator does, and it endows all this power to this one part of his creation that he made on his like last day of creation. And then the star, it has no death in it. Stars are up in the sky doing lighting up the night for us. And stars are so on my maternal grandmother's side, they had boats and they navigated by the stars. And it was the job of the mother to teach the children the stars, the constellations, how to navigate by the stars. That was actually the mother's job in my family line.
Wow.
And so on our farm, we didn't have light pollution. My mom would point out the constellations and she would say, your great grandparents and those before them, they used the stars to navigate their ships, their boats. And so I kind of got this idea that, wow, these stars have been waypoints and guides. And I'm not getting into astrology. Don't get me wrong. That's not the road I'm going down.
No,
Okay.
I understand. Yeah.
Our fates are not written in the stars, as some would say. But just the fact that they've served a purpose, they were in creation and they got to watch this whole thing, and now they say humans, they see humans, and they probably have some opinions. Maybe in my mind, this particular star has an opinion on what are you guys doing? Like you have all this power and ability that you've been endowed with from your creator, and you excel at starting wars and killing each other.
Interesting. All
Yeah.
right. So the star is going to be the fall guy.
No, more of the narrator of the book
Ah, okay. So the star.
of this is what I've observed. This is what
The,
I've observed, and this is what I see. This was what I saw back at creation and the intention of the creator, and this is what you guys have, and this is how you're missing out. So
nice. Okay. Now your wife doesn't like the star idea.
she wasn't a big fan of the star idea, but we'll workshop it. It'll be fine.
Well, I mean, I'm watching you right now, and I know she's in the room with you. I haven't seen anything thrown your way, so
That's right.
I think we're still
Yeah,
okay, right?
she's over there smiling.
Okay,
So it's
good.
she's got this particular grin that she does once in a while.
Okay, that's
And
awesome.
yeah, now the grin has stopped talking about me.
I got you.
It's shifted.
I got you. I
She's
understand.
laughing.
I
It's
understand that grin too. I get that from my
yeah,
wife. If I ever bring her up, she's like, "Really?
yeah.
Move on."
Hold on a second. We didn't talk about this in the pre-production meeting.
Right, exactly. So, all right, but how far are you with the book? I'm curious.
Oh, I well,
I'm pinning you down now. I'm
yeah,
nailing you
no,
down here.
that's good because we all need accountability.
You got it.
And we can have goals and dreams and things like that, but until we can write them down, but until we actually have accountability. So what I'm working on right now is just the structure and the outline of it.
Okay, beautiful
And I have quite a bit of it done, but it has to be reordered and kind of reworded and
for sure.
put in its place.
Yeah, right now you have like parts as parts, and you have to kind of put them where
That's
they're
right.
supposed to be. I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. Well, open invitation. When that thing is ready to go and you're launching
Okay.
that book, you come back on here.
Yeah.
All right. And because this is where we were talking about your main character.
That's right.
Okay. So make sure you come back here to the, point of
Yes.
origin and we talk on Power
Yeah.
Man about
Yeah, I think it'll be good.
the
I
book.
think it'll upset some people and it'll turn some lights on, hence the star.
Hmm.
A light in the darkness. There's a lot of yeah, a lot of metaphors and things like that. Just in using the star of hopefully it'll bring light to people and they'll realize, "Oh, I can do this. I can forge my way through the darkness of life and be light in the world."
Nice.
And yeah.
Well, don't worry about upsetting people. Okay. Because
Yeah.
you got to break a few eggs if you're going to make an omelet,
That's
brother.
right.
That's just how it
Yes.
goes. So
Yeah.
I've been doing this 6 years and decades of hate leading into it, and certainly tons of hate since I started it, and three death threats along the way.
Oh,
Okay, I
well,
mean,
you're doing
so
something right then if you're
I,
getting the death threats.
exactly. I mean, you know when you're ruffling those feathers, man, you're
Yes.
you're in the right spot.
That's
So,
good.
well, good luck to you with that. I can't wait to hear more about it. That was totally unknown. I love that we got to hear about that today.
Yeah.
So that's beautiful. As you work your way through what the podcast is about and where it comes from and what it's based upon,
Hmm.
you do have it's very motivational. And so for guys who are out there, and in this podcast, I know we have a lot of guys that just are beat down. I mean, they're working. Some of them have been, unceremoniously laid off, like you and I both
Hmm.
got,
Yeah.
right? But they're even if they're still working, they're just beat down. They feel trapped, stuck. Anything, to help them get an edge, to get a leg up, to get moving again would help them. You've got an enhanced SMART goal worksheet thing.
Hmm.
And I know your podcast is geared towards kind of motivating men to get up and in the morning and start and take action.
Hmm.
This goal sheet might help them too. Do you want to tell them about that a little bit and what
Sure.
that means?
Yeah. No, so the goal sheet is not just for what you want to do or where you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years or the things that you want to accomplish. This goal sheet, um, it's based around the SMART, as they say, SMART. So the specific, measurable, achievable, that acronym for SMART. But this goal sheet actually will work for any problem that you're having that you need a way out of. So 5 a.m. podcast has that idea that our morning routines are foundational to the rest of our day. And if we don't know where we're going, then we're never going to know when we arrive at where we wanted to be. So the SMART goal worksheet, it's in a document on my computer. It's going to be 75 pages. Right now it's close to 30. And the reason it's close to 30 is because I have to add in some journaling pages. So the idea behind our we're calling it the SMART goal worksheet and discovery journal. And so part of what's within the pages is coloring pages, Sudoku puzzles, word searches, journal pages, plans for the month. The idea is because I know I've had this problem. I buy a book and I think it's going to change my life because it's a journal, not a book with lots of words in it, the words I put in it. And then I put it in a drawer and I forget about it. So the idea behind it being a discovery journal is that it's something that if you don't feel like working on your goal that day, it's okay because there's something like this. One moment as I get get off camera. So well, there's a little positive message. I can do this. It's a coloring thing. And so if gosh darn it, you just feel like kicking rocks for the day, but you need to be in that discovery journal. Well, you can just cover something and color something and you know that you've accomplished a page in the book. And I so the idea is to have a variety of things in there because that's kind of how my brain works. There's a variety of stuff going on at any one moment, but it's to keep you engaged with it. And a lot of times we feel like we've done something wrong if we've neglected uh, a project that we're working on, and we don't get it done. But then we don't get it done because we haven't worked on it for a while. So the idea is that we want to be able to have the booklet, the workbook as a journal as well, so that you can have this with you. And if you feel like you don't want to work on your goals today, you can at least be in the journal and write down, man, I'm not sure I love this book or not, but I'm going to document that today I do not feel like working on my goals. At least you've got something in the journal that you can look back on and say, oh, I remember when I had that stinking thinking going on in my head and I did not want to move closer towards my goal because there's comfort in the stinking thinking and then the misery of the 9 to 5. Um, I we had one of our audio techs on a game. We had some out of town crew members, and they were saying to Brad, who is phenomenal at audio, boy, that's kind of a rat's nest. Looking at one of our cables, and Brad said to him, "Yeah, but it's our rat's nest, so just back off, man." So
And you got to take ownership, right? It's,
yes, take ownership.
only I can talk about how bad this is because it's mine. All right. So
Yes, that's right.
I got you.
Yeah,
I
we've all
got you.
been there.
I love where all this comes from too. I mean, you have a very strong tradition in your family. You and I,
Hmm.
even when we first met, we were talking about how to pronounce your last name, and
Yeah.
your whole family heritage back for, I mean, generation after generation.
Yes.
And so you also, I think, understand your faith over all those
Hmm.
generations as well. As someone who understands the past about his family and where he comes from, I would love to hear your opinion on the role of husbands and fathers, in the
Hmm.
family, and where you see that as opposed to where society seems to see it, today. Any thoughts on that? And feel
Yeah.
free to say I don't want to answer, because this is
Oh
coming
no,
out of
that's
left
good.
field. I know, but
That's
it's
okay. Well, I was thinking about this, and I would start answering that by saying, a man never plants a tree for himself. He plants that for the generations to come.
mm,
And that's about our life here on earth is so those men that have the opportunity to be fathers, and I realize there's different levels of involvement and things that that come up that are unexpected, but those guys that have that opportunity to be dads and to realize that every day I'm working on planting that tree, and not for my son or daughter and not just for their son and daughter, but for the ones that come after them. People might forget your name. They're not going to forget what you've done for them through the generations.
Yeah.
And so then as far as the Christian aspect of fathers and sons, a little bit of my upbringing had to do with that Christian Reformed Calvinism that came out of the Netherlands, Holland, or those places. And one of the big components that I took away from that, well, I don't like Calvinism as a thought, so take that as what you will, is that component of training up your children in the faith. And so one of the things that a lot of Dutch people do and have in their homes is they have biblical characters as art on the walls. And the idea of that is so that the children would say, "Oh, what's that picture?" And then it's an opportunity for the parents to teach about a biblical experience. And the other thing that it was really formative in our life about that is those devotions that families have, whether they're in the morning or in the evening, and just that opportunity of. I heard it put this way once that the father has the privilege to teach his children to pray at the dinner table, and that the youngest child, as it says, a child will lead them. So the youngest child would sit on the father's lap, and the father would whisper the prayer, whether it's blessing of the food or the prayer after dinner or something like that, of whispering that prayer so that the child is actually speaking that prayer out as they're hearing from their father. And so some of those formative things is just such an honor for the father to be able to hand off to the children.
Hmm. Nice, nice. And that was prevalent in your family growing up then, I'm assuming. You've
Oh
seen
yeah,
that.
absolutely. Yeah,
That's great. That's great.
yeah. So very
The
thankful to my parents for that, for sure.
That's awesome. The and yeah, I mean that's a blessing for sure that that was
Hmm.
bestowed upon you so that you can pass it on, which is
Hmm.
great. I think that as we talk about our listeners, um, I know so many men that are very strong in their faith and they try very hard. And the fact that all of society is just sort of beating down the door, they've actually started to question, whether and how much, and whether or not even to talk about their faith and God and the whole bit, at the table in public, so on and so forth. And I've even heard some of them counsel their kids, hey, you don't bring this up because I don't want anything bad to happen to you, that
Hmm.
type of thing. How would you counsel folks like that came to you, or folks that
Yeah.
were in your family and had that conundrum? I'm not sure which way to go. Maybe you have some words of wisdom. You talk
Oh
about
yeah.
this on, the 5 a.m. podcast. So
So,
maybe you
well,
got a couple words of wisdom for
yeah.
us here at Power Man,
So
man.
here's a couple of things. When you're in a fight, don't go down to the ground. And number two, never pick a fight with a man whose hands are in his pocket.
Hmm.
So I'll just preface that by going straight to the violence. Never land on the ground. And if you're in the fight, do not go down. Number two is the best way to win a fight is not get involved in one.
Okay.
And I will say though, the idea of that we hear of turning the other cheek in the Bible. So the people would get backhanded because there was that caste system, and the people, doling out the smacks across the face that Jesus was talking about, they would hit with the back of the hand. The front of the hand was saved for equals. Apparently, I might be getting this wrong and mixing it up, but one hand was used for those less than, and so by Jesus saying, turn the other cheek, that would force them to have to hit you with the hand that signified you were their equal.
Ah.
Uh, Fascinating when when we
Hmm.
study to show ourselves approved and we kind of get into things a little bit more than that cursory Sunday morning sermon that we might hear. But, there comes a time where you have to stand up for what you believe in, because there's people who believe maybe different or opposite of you, and they're standing up for their faith, their belief system. And it's only natural that your spiritual walk is going to upset someone who loves darkness because they know the light exposes their deeds.
Mm.
And we find that on the pages of scripture that those people that are unhappy with that Christian influence are unhappy because they don't want the light to expose what they've done wrong. And I we could probably all agree that you never actually have to point out to an adult what they've done wrong because they're all harboring that thought of what they hate about themselves or what they don't like about themselves, or we never want anyone to know that I did X, Y, and Z, uh, and their proclivities. So about those fathers saying to their children, just keep your mouth shut. No, no, just take the easy road. Just no, sorry, can't do it. We gotta occupy. We have to take dominion. And sometimes that gets a little messy. I get it. But you know what? There's the cheek from on character, and they help us to have a story for life of our we overcome by the blood of the lamb and the word of our testimony. If you don't have a testimony, how of that scripture verse? Because we overcome by the testimony. Sorry, you just froze up on me there.
Give me 1 second. You just froze up on me too. Figures, because we were talking about this. Give me 1 second. Let's see what we got.
Okay. Okay. I'm that's right.
All right. Are we back?
Yeah. So it's important that we speak up. It's important that we let our voices be heard. For far too long. I was thinking about this a little while ago. When I was growing up, people would say, well, you don't talk about politics and you don't talk about religion. And well, that's great for the ruling class,
Right.
sure. And whoever those powers might be of the string pullers or the people behind the curtain. And we want to be able to let our light shine. And, like Jesus talked about, don't let your light be hidden under a bushel basket. And I would think as a child, well, it's the bushel basket's going to catch on fire and the place will burn down. That's a terrible idea, Jesus. Who would do that? Oh, we want our light to shine. And, there's a lot more people looking for our light than those who want to snuff out that candle. And so we need to be bold. And it talks in about being gentle as doves and wise as serpents and just having that discernment. I mean, sometimes maybe you I know I've been in places where I felt like the Lord said, just don't say anything. It's fine. They've heard enough, they've rejected it enough. Uh we don't we can just move on to somebody else that's going to receive
Right.
what we have to say. And there's also that point too where those deceivers. It amazes me that when we read the Bible with the idea that there was already deceivers and forces of wickedness within the church, within the early church, because Peter and Paul talk about people that have crept in to deceive the people. Like you read First Timothy 6 and talking about Peter talked about making merchandise, leadership making merchandise of the people. And in First Timothy 6, we read about these people that find that they can become very wealthy by appearing as ministers of the gospel. And it talks about why they put on the show for you get your 20-minute sermon offering, your 20-minute off a sermon for the offering, and then the regular sermon comes after. I always think about First Timothy 6 when I hear that going on. The reason I bring that up is because not only do we have to speak up and speak the truth, but there's people who will claim the name of Jesus and people that will disdain the name of Jesus who are working against us for their own personal gain. And so when we want to be speaking the truth and building up our family so that they can speak the truth, hopefully we will. Well, I know the word of the Lord never returns void. So we're going to reach people and change our society one person at a time.
Hmm. I love your answer. We had to get in a couple of parts right there because we had a little technical
Yes.
difficulty. But brother, I love the answer, and I love that you're in favor of, being one of the lions, and coming
Yes.
out and standing up for it. So,
Yes.
power to you in that, and I love that.
Amen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. You are doing a lot of outreach through your podcast without,
I hope so.
actually, putting it out there. I mean, it's still based in what it's based in. And do you find that people, when they are listening to your podcast and they're hearing kind of what it's about, do you find them shrinking away from the Christian, backbone of it, or do you find them more embracing it and saying, "Yeah, this makes sense"?
Well, I don't know. I have no feedback that people are cringing or running and looking to hide. Uh,
Good.
I do get a lot of positive feedback and of people just talking about their stories, the darkness that they've come out of, or the addiction that they've come out of, or the challenges of life. And I don't try and um, what's the word? I don't know. I'm not looking for the right words maybe, but if somebody doesn't want to talk about it in an interview, their spiritual side of things, that's fine.
Mhm.
Uh, the way that some people look at life is they could look down on the face of the earth and see people running around and they think that's it. You die and you're pushing up daisies and that's it. The water just flows under the bridge. But we have that, but then you put that other filter on, lighting stages and stuff from my past. We'd have these gobos or cookies as we'd call them, and some of them were colored, but you have that lens, that spiritual lens that fits over that face of the earth so that we understand that there are forces of good and evil that we can't see that are in that spiritual realm.
Mhm.
And so when we have that lens that everything around us is physical and spiritual, then we understand that it's just part of the conversation and there's just a lot of unseen, but we can still talk about it. We can still um, share our point of view with people. And, Jesus said in his Great Commission, it was to make disciples, not converts.
Mhm.
So I'm not trying to make any converts. I'm just trying to make some disciples and
Right.
maybe plant some seeds into that ear gate or that eye gate that could take root. And so that people could say, that's a good idea. Maybe I should consider that. That's what I'm going for.
Love it. Absolutely love it. That's a great way to put it. That was a great way to
Yeah.
put it.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Michael, as we kind of, pull this around and get to wrapping this up, we've unpacked a ton, and I appreciate how open you've been about all of it and your willingness to talk about all these different topics
Hmm.
on this show. I'm sure it's helping somebody out there, and
I
uh,
hope
and
so.
that's why we do what we do. You know what I mean?
Right.
Both of us. But because we've unpacked so much, I want to make sure that I'm giving you, the floor for the last minute or two. Is there anything that I didn't ask you about? Is there anything that we talked about and maybe you want to drive home a little harder? Or maybe just to leave behind a nugget, something like that
Hmm.
for the audience, wherever you need to go with it. The last couple minutes are yours. Go for it.
Okay. Well, thank you. So 5ampodcast.com. That's a great spot to go.
Right.
And my wife sent me this uh, scripture verse, and it's First Timothy 4, 8 and 9. And I love going to the gym. I love exercising. I've got a couple of bicycles and of course my motorcycle, but I love that physical training. And so First Timothy 4, 9, 8 and 9, and this is from the Amplified says, for physical training is of some value, but godliness, spiritual training is useful and of value in everything and in every way, for it holds promise for the present life and also for the life which is to come. This saying is reliable and worthy of complete acceptance by everybody. And uh, as we go through life, we pick up on what our parents teach us. We go to school, we pick up on what the teachers teach us. And then maybe you go to post-secondary, maybe you are in the trades or somewhere else, and you're getting all of these messages. And so all that training that we had in the past is a filter for what comes in, and sometimes we throw the filter away because we didn't like it. I get it, but I do also want to say, you remember you've read in Proverbs where it says, "Spare the rod, spoil the child."
Absolutely.
Okay, so that word rod does not mean a stick, really, that you beat somebody with because they've been bad. That word rod in the Hebrew means village, tribe, royal scepter, or perhaps a shepherd's rod. So you could read that as saying, spare your village, spare your tribe, spare the influence of those who are above you, like your parents. Then you spoil your child.
Hmm.
So when you look at those Hebrew words, you realize, oh, this isn't about giving spankings to your children. It's actually about ensuring that your children understand where you've come from and where you're going, and so that they understand the responsibility of the name they carry. So some people, you hear, make a name for yourself. But in Christ Jesus, we're called by his name. And so then we get that responsibility because of the name that we're called by. I was telling you about the fellow that had no idea that his name, what his name was, because he
Right.
was always sworn at by his parents. So he had a label attached to him. And gentlemen, ladies, if you don't like that label that's been put on you, rip it off. Jesus has a much different label. And if you are a parent and you have children, make sure that those labels that you put on your children uplift them and help them to understand who has come behind them and that they determine who comes after them. And if you don't think your past is important, I got to leave you um, with this personal story of mine. I have always liked Airedale Terriers. I have always had an affinity for Airedale Terriers. We never had one on the farm growing up. I didn't know any friends or relatives. I saw them on TV and in books, and I just had this affinity for Airedale Terriers. Well, um, almost 10 years ago, my Paka died at 98, and my mom got one of his photo albums. And she said, "Here, this is your grandpa's photo album. Have a look through it." Well, I'm flipping through the channels, the pages, and there is a picture of one of my ancestors from, I don't know, 100 years ago. 16 years old. He's getting his picture taken with his Airedale Terrier. So, ladies and gentlemen,
Wow.
it's good to know the past because that's our foundation for the future.
Love it. Love it. I had no idea where you were going with that. I was like, all right, well, it's floor is yours. I love it.
Yeah.
Great way to wrap that
That's what
up, man.
happens. You give me the mic and the stage.
Oh,
That's why beware the man who speaks from the stage.
well, you are deserving of the mic and the stage, brother.
Well,
I
thank you.
love what you
Thank
do
you.
with it. So
God bless you
that
for
was
that.
fantastic. All right, Michael, thank you so much for coming on this show and just going deep on so many topics, leading the way for so many men who are listening to this today
Amen.
to just get back in touch with what they need to be doing, how they should be, building disciples and not running from it.
Yeah.
And with the show that you do and the way that you do it and encouraging people the way you do, power to you, and I wish you nothing but continued success. Thanks for coming on, brother.
Amen. And I just wanted to say, if there's anybody behind bars who's listening to this, if there
Could be, could be.
if there could be, if you're incarcerated, good sir, that is not the final chapter in your book.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have those stats, but it's very possible.
It's very
It's very
possible. I just
possible.
had that sense. It's not the final chapter in your book,
Yeah,
brother.
I like it. I like
Yeah.
it. Thank you, man. It's
You
been
bet.
awesome, really and truly.
I loved it.
All right, thank you. Folks, so this has been another awesome episode of the Power Man podcast. The reason that we bring powerful men like this on here to talk about these powerful subjects and topics is because we both are totally behind you in your
Hmm.
mission to become better protectors, better providers, better leaders tomorrow than you are today, to become better men, better fathers, and better husbands tomorrow than you are today. And the reason that we want that for you, the reason that we're willing to help you fight for it, is because you're worth it. You
Hmm.
have value. Your families are worth it. And at some point, you just have to believe it. Until next time.